So with all that said, let's crack on and get on with it. Let me introduce our opening session, which is a case study about how AstraZeneca is using knowledge management to aid lifelong learning in a complex digital world. And it is my great pleasure to introduce Bonnie Chuck to the stage. She is Senior Director, Head of Business and Digital Transformation at AstraZeneca. She is a strategic, hands-on, business and results-driven professional, strong digital transformation, digital channel management, information and knowledge management, collaboration, social media, and Enterprise 2.0 expertise. So, Bonnie, when you're ready, the platform is yours.
So here are some of my thoughts and some of the things I've been sharing with my colleagues within my company. So a couple of key trends. What's the future of work going to be like in our healthcare industry? Healthcare is changing. There's so many new digital enabled technologies and ways of working that's going to change how healthcare looks like. So what do we need to know? We ask ourselves. Another trend is like it's what we call half-life of skills. It's like whatever we learn, those technical skills we have or new knowledge that we gain, in a couple of years' time, the quality of the skills we've gained will be half or even less so. So I think the key point is like things are changing very fast, and skills that we are learning will be obsoleted quite quickly. So what do we need to know? Another trend is like human and AI will be working closely together. How would we actually work together? What are some of the things that we may not even have imagined, and how things should work? Again, what do we need to know when we work in such a world? And new roles are emerging as well. Roles that we could not have imagined, new roles that are emerging because of the new AI technology landscape. Again, what do we need to know? And I've been asking these questions because knowledge management, a lot of times is asking, what knowledge do we want to manage, right? So, and it depends on what we need to know. However, the point is that it is not just about what you need to know in such a fast-changing, unpredictable world. It is actually how we learn, how you learn that will make a difference, right? So let's think about how do we manage knowledge, and I define it as how do you actually facilitate knowledge flow, particularly in a large corporation. And we can imagine the world as, both predictable and unpredictable, and start to ask ourselves, how would we manage knowledge differently if we were in these two different worlds? Just think about it. If it's predictable, how do you manage knowledge? You know what it is, that where you want to get to, you know what to learn, what needs to be shared, you apply best practices, you aim to make sure everybody do the right thing, we optimize and we reduce risk. However, in a highly unpredictable world, there's no definitive answers. The answers are not yet fully known. We explore, we navigate. We need to innovate and experiment. And a lot of times it's about figuring out altogether, and I call it collective sense making. So how do we actually manage knowledge then? So in a predictable world, I think for knowledge management practitioners, we're definitely more familiar with the space. We'll be able to define what data, information, or we call knowledge, is critical. We find ways to collect, organize, share, adopt, and maximize the reuse. And it's pretty predictable, and the information can be analyzed at scale. Whereas in an unpredictable world, knowledge is still emerging. There are multiple futures, there are multiple options. So knowledge management, it's about connecting people, spotting the trends and weak signals, and it's about collective sense making. And what does knowledge management look like then in these two different worlds? In a more predictable world, we establish what we call knowledge management processes. So we share information, data in information systems, and we invite experts who share their proven knowledge and experiences with the community, right? All sounds very familiar, and it's very, very important. At the same time, when we get into the unpredictable situation, we actually cannot define what knowledge is required yet. So what kind of knowledge management processes do we talk about here? We're talking about processes to allow knowledge to emerge and focus on sharing and learning as work gets done, as you figure things out together. So, which is why within AstraZeneca, we recognize the importance of both, but we also recognize that increasingly we are living and working in an unpredictable world. Therefore, we are redefining the way we learn. And we introduce a 3Es learning framework, which is about inviting all our colleagues to think about learning. It's not just about learning through education. It's also through learning through exposure, which is about connecting with one another, conversation, networking, collaboration. And it's about also learning through experience, through getting the work done, really get your hands dirty, trying things out for the first time, experimenting, going beyond your comfort zone. And in the past year or two, I've been also introducing 5 work habits to help all our colleagues to build learning agility at AstraZeneca. And how do we define learning agility? It is defined as first, the ability and willingness to learn, and second, and more importantly, to apply what we have just learned in unfamiliar situations. And this is not just about individual learning. It's also learning as a team, learning as an organization. And it's about inviting everyone to be curious, to be collaborative, and to be brave. And these 5 work habits, as you can see here, it include self and team reflection, innovation and growth mindset, psychological safety, inclusive meetings and collaboration, learning and working as networks. If you look at these 5 habits, they're not learning habits, or they're not knowledge management habits. They are just work habits. It's just how we do our day-to-day work. And as a result, knowledge is being shared, discussed, debated upon. And as a result, we all learn together. So just give you a little bit of highlights, some of the things we've been doing, so to make the concepts real for all of you. So for example, under self-team reflection, we invite colleagues to pause and reflect, to ask those questions. What have I learned? What have I tried? What worked? What did not work? What can I do next time? We invite people to keep online learning journal, where they are invited to ask one question. What have I learned in the past 4 weeks? And note it down. We invite people to block time in the diary. Start with even just 5 minutes to have the moment to pause and get that renewal and thinking time, and build reflection into team meetings. That's the online journal I was talking about. So it's a simple question: as the world is changing fast, what have you learned in the past 4 weeks? It's a real example. In terms of innovation and growth mindset, we introduced the concept of fixed versus growth mindset to our colleagues, particularly highlighting how important it is to have a growth mindset, to work hard, to face the challenge. When you face the challenge, be persistent, and when you fail, treat it as not yet. So, and that's the kind of approach we'll encourage colleagues to think about how they handle the day-to-day work. And for innovation, it's quite interesting. We have a lot of scientists, a lot of experts in the company, and I invite you to take a look at this picture. And I ask my colleagues to do the same and say, what do you see? Most people will say, oh, this is a CT scan, right? And radiologists immediately we try to look for the tumor in the scan. But actually, what they miss is, I don't know how many of you have spotted this already. So it's on the top right-hand corner, you see a little gorilla actually in this CT scan. What it is telling us is that a lot of times experts only look for things that they expect to see, and all these other things that they don't expect to see, what we consider weak signals, it's not visible to them, even though it's right in front of their eyes. So we use this to tease our colleagues and invite our experts to challenge our own assumptions and challenge what we typically feel comfortable in terms of what we're looking for, so that we are able to open up and look for other signals. In terms of psychological safety, we invite people to speak up, because only by speaking up you spot those weak signals. And we need to create an environment for people to feel it's being trusted, respected, and then inviting everyone and creating space for team and one another to speak up. And we give practical tips to our colleagues in terms of some of the things they can do. Including framing the work. We've not been there before. We need everybody to be in the game. So come join in, share your voice, right? Be humble. As a leader, you may say, I may miss something. I need to hear from you. And be curious. Ask a lot of questions. Dig deeper. We invite people to work out loud, to share things that is not fully polished or fully ready for publish yet. And it is very hard for many of the experts and scientists. So it's a culture change on its own, whether we call it knowledge sharing culture or learning culture, it doesn't really matter. But it's a way of working that is actually required to allow us to be resilient and also to be a continuously learning organization. We invite people to consciously think about how to conduct inclusive meetings and collaboration, bringing out different roles so that people feel comfortable that they can challenge one another and they have and they help to make the meeting a collective success. You can see a range of different roles we actually introduced to the organization, all the way from the top senior executive level. In fact, they started first, and then going all the way to the organization. We invite people to ask questions and also coaching question as well. So to explore rather than asking directive question. It's like, what happened? Tell me more. How do you feel? What's helping? What's not helping? What is getting in your way? If you have a magic wand, what would you wish for? These questions are very powerful. And if we do that now day to day, it's actually opening up the knowledge flow within the organization. And finally, the fifth work habits is learning and working as networks. We invite people to think about what kind of network do you rely on to develop yourself and to give you ideas. And you can see that different types of networks, whether you work in a team, you work with a community, work and learn with a community, or work and learn with a wider network. And we introduce concepts to colleagues, recognizing that it's not one is better than the others, but actually you need to think about if you work in a stable work team, you are there to learn from one another and to drive actions. Whereas there are communities of practice which you can actually connect practitioners in different areas, different functional silos, but at the same time you learn together. And you also draw on the external and internal wider network to pull out ideas, innovative thinking, something that you may not day to day actually think about or touch upon. So all these actually help the organization to think about how we network and how we continuously learn as we do our job. Just some of the examples. So how do we actually bring all this to the organization? Last year, I ran a series of water cooler sessions. Every Friday, we bring people together. We don't lecture them in terms of, hey, you need to learn, or let's build a learning culture. We actually invite them to immerse themselves to practice those 5 habits with one another. It's a peer-to-peer learning. And we have learning agility assessment to invite people to self-reflect, where am I today? Where do I want to strengthen? We run learning out loud circles, which we invite colleagues, four colleagues from 4 different business areas. They do not know one another, but they come together, they meet once a week, and for 4 weeks, they pick a topic that they want to develop and learn more, and then they self-direct their learning. So it's been a really interesting experiment, and people love it, particularly during the COVID pandemic times when not all of us go into the office. They actually find that kind of serendipity, access to other colleagues and learning together fascinating. And one last example I want to show you is the Learning Hackathon. We also invite hundreds of colleagues to come together to actually reimagine what do we need and answer the question, what do we need to learn and unlearn to prepare for the future of work? And you can see in the lovely picture, which is the outcome of those discussions. And it comes from the people. I think the most important is we invite people to reflect from themselves rather than telling them this is what you need to do and you need to be a lifelong learner. But actually, they need to make sense of it all, particularly in such a complex, dynamic, unpredictable world. So in a nutshell, this is all about inviting colleagues. When we talk about knowledge management, promoting knowledge sharing culture, it's actually about inviting colleagues to practice these 5 work habits. And we redefine learning, we focus on learning agility, and we believe that by doing this, everybody plays a part and the knowledge will continuously evolve, debated upon, and being refreshed. And we are empowering all our colleagues to learn, unlearn, relearn, right? And thrive in whatever unfamiliar situations they will face, and we can all be future ready. That's the ambition, and that's the journey we're doing through. Final thoughts. So what might knowledge management practitioners need to consider in the new normal? So I've been in the knowledge management space for such a long time. So it's a very interesting journey, right, that we've been through. To a certain extent, what I've shared today, it's been there for forever, except that, with all the changes that's going on, it kind of put a spotlight to think about the unpredictable world a lot more. But in a nutshell, it's like in an unpredictable world of work, knowledge does not stand still. We need to remember, right? So it continuously evolves, and therefore knowledge management and lifelong learning and that kind of learning culture, basically they come together, two sides of the same coin. Do we need information management, data management? I know you talk a lot about this today. Yes, it's really critical. Get it right. It's critical for AI, critical for, for to do the analysis and for a lot of application to scale. But at the same time, when things are uncertain, we need to be extremely human-centric. We need to invite people to figure it out all together. And hence, those 5 work habits become very important for us to really collectively make sense of things together and figure things out. So final tips for our fellow practitioners. I always remind myself and others, let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. And if you're enabling the workforce and if your project and initiative, it's about operating in a predictable work context, many of the existing KM solutions will work very well, right? Some of the information systems or knowledge systems that you develop, they will work well. But we do need to be very mindful. We need to design solutions that cater for both predictable and unpredictable work context. And when we're talking about to manage knowledge creation, innovation, we need to focus not only on what knowledge to manage, because we don't know everything yet. So it's all more about how to facilitate the knowledge emergence. And the knowledge emergence, with the word emergence, it cannot be driven by any top down or anyone specific. It's still evolving. So it requires everyone to play a part in collective sense making and shaping the culture together. And hence I just share with you some of the journey that we are still on. And we are together with our colleagues shaping the knowledge sharing. Some of you call it knowledge management. And for us, it's like the learning culture, the lifelong learning culture together. So on that note, I invite all of you to share with me your thoughts, maybe something you agree, disagree with, and happy to take any questions, and do share with me what you have taken away, and stay connected.
Thank you very much, Bonnie. That was inspirational and also personally very informative. I mean, I think that probably my last engagement with the topic was in the universe of much greater predictability, where it was, a round of systems encoding knowledge and sharing it in that much more traditional way. And listening to you talk, I'm going, gosh, that's now been included. Gosh, that's now been included. And you've really created a fantastic synthesis and brought things together to counter the problems of unpredictability in an accelerated world that one is working within, and all of the implicit changes that are going down. So we've got not much time, but I've got a number of sort of things I want to get into. One is how do you now position what you're doing? Because clearly you know exactly what you're doing, but for the rest of the business, you've brought things together in really quite an interesting way. How do you, when you have to have that conversation about this is who we are, this is the budgets we need, this is the value we're delivering, how do you kind of frame your value proposition now in a way that the rest of the business can understand? And associated with that is where you've got to uniquely you, given how long you've been in it and you've just naturally evolved, or do you also see out there other practitioners, maybe with your depth of expertise, having evolved it in a similar way?
I think you asked me a number of questions.
Yes.
Well, maybe the first one first. It's like, how do we actually kind of pitch this or bring this to the business? I think we start from not talking about knowledge management, not talking about learning. So all these labels, I actually don't use that explicitly. We talk about the business, right? Yeah. We talk about the context of digital transformation, because that is what the business is focusing on, right? So, and we ask the business and have discussion with leaders that if we need to go through this kind of digital transformation and healthcare is changing, big time, how do we actually prepare all our employees at all levels to be ready? Mm-hmm. And all the rest, that's what I've shared with you, or earlier. Those are just ways to get there. But the positioning, it's about, here's our company growth through innovation strategy. Here's the digital transformation journey that we are going through, and it's important for the business. So let's take our colleagues on the journey. And knowledge management offer lots of techniques, both in terms of techniques, tools, methodologies to bring people there. And those 5 habits, in a way, illustrate many of the knowledge management practices for a long time. It's just how it's positioned.
Actually, I'll swap out my second question to an associated one here. Are you then co-authoring L&D strategies, or are you simply a very close ally to another group doing that work?
I think it's a very good question. I think it's about in the complex digital world, I think it's all about collaboration. So it's almost like it doesn't really matter where you sit. I currently sit in global talent and development, in global HR. Having said that, we don't work in silo anymore.
Sure.
I work closely with the chief digital officer and business leaders across the business. We actually bring things together. It's like a melting pot that we see with the patients at the heart, with the business strategy at the heart. We have a North Star, and then we bring the different stakeholders together. So yes, and in a way, we are innovating what traditional L&D means. We are also innovating what traditional knowledge management would mean in the organization. And we don't use those labels explicitly.
Yes.
We do it and immerse people in the experience. And that's why those learning hackathon, a lot of sense-making events, workshops, we bring people together to figure it out together. And that's a methodology on its own.
I get that. No, absolutely. And very briefly, that other question, do you see others on a similar path less travelled to you as well in other organisations? Or is what you've done fairly unique?
I think what we've done is pioneering, but I would say that many organizations are trying to figure that out. There are progressive learning and development leaders, knowledge management leaders. I think they are actually bringing in, or digital transformation leaders, they are bringing in these kind of practices into the company. I think it takes time. I think don't expect it's like a switch that you can turn on and off and you get it tomorrow. It's an investment, it's a journey. It requires discipline to get there. But I think we are pioneering, we are innovating, but there are many colleagues who are actually thinking about this as well.
I wish we had more time. It's just so fascinating, and thank you for sharing the story. Really inspiring, and it's a great way to start the day. So thank you for your time, thank you for sharing that, and just continue to be amazing on that.
Thank you. Stay in touch. I mean, you can find me on LinkedIn, and I've also got a website. It's sense-making.org, and you can see some of the additional materials.
We'll do that. Thank you very much for your time. See you soon.
Take care.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.